In the Treblinka extermination camp during World War II, a man worked as a guard who embodied unimaginable evil. He was nicknamed Ivan the Terrible, a figure so demonic that his actions surpassed comprehension, even in the context of genocide. And we will look at his story right now. The Treblinka extermination camp, located in the remote forests of occupied Poland, existed for a single reason: to kill. From July 1942 to August 1943, an estimated 800 to 900,000 Jews were murdered here. Unlike Auschwitz, this was not a labor camp with an extermination section, but a pure death factory. Prisoners who survived the initial selection and were assigned to the Sonderkommando, work units forced to assist in the extermination process, spoke of 2 Ukrainian guards who operated the engine that pumped carbon monoxide into the gas chambers. One was named Nikolai, the other Ivan, and it was Ivan who earned the nickname the Terrible, referring to the Russian Tsar Ivan IV, who was famous for his tyranny. But this Ivan was not just a passive executor of orders. The testimony of those who miraculously survived paints a portrait of a monster. Ivan the Terrible would stand at the entrance to the Schlauch, a narrow path that the naked victims had to run down to the gas chambers. His job was to ensure that the process ran quickly, and he did it with unimaginable brutality. What we know of the deeds of Ivan the Terrible comes exclusively from the testimony of a few dozen survivors. During the court trials decades later, these testimonies became the central point of the prosecution. Survivor Eliyahu Rosenberg, who worked at the gas chambers, testified in 1987 at the trial in Jerusalem. "I saw him every day. He stood there with a long steel pipe. When people did not want to enter the chamber, he would beat them with the pipe indiscriminately until they were covered in blood. I saw him cut women. I saw him kill people." Other witnesses described similar scenes. He allegedly carried a long sword or machete, which he used to slash into the crowd. Pinchas Epstein described how Ivan would cut off prisoners' ears with a bayonet and a knife and force them to keep running. Other witnesses said that Ivan enjoyed cutting off the breasts of women who were walking to their deaths. His job was then to start the engine that produced the poisonous gas. During the 20 to 30 minutes that the people inside were dying, Ivan reportedly sat outside, drinking vodka and listening to the radio, while leaning against the wall of the building from which the muffled screams of thousands of people came. So Ivan the Terrible was not just a murderer. He was a sadist who found personal pleasure in killing. He became the embodiment of evil in Treblinka, and after the war he became one of the most wanted perpetrators of the Holocaust. For decades after the war ended, it seemed that Ivan had disappeared. But then, in the mid-1970s, the investigators' attention turned to the United States. Organizations searching for Nazi criminals, and later the American Office of Special Investigations, began to vet immigrants from Eastern Europe. Their eyes fell on John Demjanjuk, an American citizen of Ukrainian descent. He lived a quiet life in a suburb of Cleveland, Ohio, worked as an auto mechanic at a Ford factory, and was raising 3 children with his wife. But investigators managed to obtain a service ID card from an SS training camp, which bore the same name, John Demjanjuk, and a photograph. When they showed this ID and other photographs to survivors from Treblinka, one by one they began to say, "That's him, that's the face, those eyes. I'll never forget those eyes. Your hands are covered in blood." The identifications therefore seemed certain. In 1981, John Demjanjuk was convicted in the United States for falsifying his immigration documents, in which he had concealed his service in Treblinka, and his citizenship was revoked. In 1986, he became the first naturalized American in history to be extradited to Israel to face trial for genocide. You weren't there, I was there. Ask him, ask him. The trial, which began in Jerusalem in 1987, was a worldwide sensation. After the trial of Adolf Eichmann in 1961, this was the second major opportunity for Israel to try a Holocaust perpetrator. The courtroom was charged with emotion. The survivors, now elderly men and women, were reliving their traumas. Key witness Eliyahu Rosenberg looked Demjanjuk in the eyes and shouted, "Ivan, I see you. I see your eyes. They are the same murderous eyes. I am sure that it is him." Demjanjuk, who insisted on his innocence throughout the trial, defended himself by saying it was a mistake. He claimed he was a Soviet prisoner of war himself and spent most of the war in German POW camps. He claimed he was never in Treblinka nor in any SS training camp. But the court didn't believe him. The testimony was too strong, too consistent, and in April 1988, John Demjanjuk was found guilty of crimes against humanity and genocide. But while Demjanjuk was waiting on death row in Israel for the outcome of his appeal, the world was changing dramatically. In 1989, the Berlin Wall fell. In 1991, the Soviet Union collapsed, and this geopolitical upheaval also opened the KGB archives, which had been inaccessible for decades. What was found inside changed the entire case. Demjanjuk's lawyers and journalists discovered dozens of statements in Moscow from other former Ukrainian guards interrogated and tried by the Soviets in the 1950s and 60s. These men also served in Treblinka, and they also spoke of a sadistic gas chamber operator. However, their sadist was not named Demjanjuk, but Ivan Marchenko. The testimony from the KGB archives was stronger than the previous ones. Not only did they identify Marchenko as Ivan the Terrible, but other guards who knew both men confirmed that it was Marchenko who served at Treblinka, whereas Demjanjuk had never been there. Marchenko's description, tall, dark-haired, strong, with a scar, also perfectly matched the survivors' descriptions. So in 1993, the Israeli Supreme Court faced a torturous dilemma. They had a man convicted on the basis of emotional testimony from survivors, but now they also had new, compelling evidence that they had been wrong. In an excellent display of judicial integrity, the judges ruled that although Demjanjuk is rightly a suspect and was likely a Nazi collaborator, there is now reasonable doubt that he was Ivan the Terrible of Treblinka. The death sentence was overturned and John Demjanjuk was acquitted in the Treblinka case. But what about the real Ivan the Terrible? What happened to the man whose crimes were so heinous that they were mistakenly attributed to another? Of Ivan Marchenko, likely born in 1911 in Ukraine, we know very little. We know he was in Treblinka. We know that by all accounts he was the gas chamber operator, and then he disappeared. The last confirmed report about him dates back to 1943, when he escaped after the prisoner uprising in Treblinka. Some sources suggest he was transferred to northern Italy, as was common for the personnel of Operation Reinhard. Other unconfirmed reports say that he was spotted in Yugoslavia in 1944. After 1945, however, he completely vanished without a trace. Ivan Marchenko, the man responsible for unimaginable sadism, was never found, nor was he ever brought to justice. He left behind only traumatic memories and a case of miscarriage of justice that occupied courts around the world for 3 decades.